to the topics for today. So we're going to cover all the bases, starting at the very beginning. So if you're brand new to versioning, that's okay, but we're going to very quickly build that up. So how versions are displayed and organized, how we create them, and the best practices there, or suggested best practices. How we can recover previous versions. There's quite a few options and maybe some that you're not aware of. So if things go wrong, how do we recover them? Then we'll look at how we can compare versions, because that's another common question. And that's a physical document comparison. And then how we manage content that comes from outside of iManage. Now that could be via an email attachment, but it could be something you've got stored on a network drive, or on your desktop. How do we connect everything back up? And throughout this, I'll be going through a few suggested drafting, versioning workflows as well. So let us begin. And again, I just need to check. No, I don't think you need a login to get. I think they're on the website, as far as I'm aware. You just go to the Ascertus.com website, and they should be available there on. I think it's our blogs page, or I should pay attention. Really,
it's on the videos tab under resources. I've just put it in the chat to everyone, so everyone can see the link.
Cool, that's great. There we are. So right, let's begin. So I've got my little demo machine up and running. Let's look at the visibility of versions, the basic understanding of. So I'll zoom this in ever so slightly, just so we can get a bit more in view here. So when we see any document, each document, as we know, has a unique document number which identifies that document. But we can also create versions. So by default, a document is .1. So this document is 86214.1. We can create formal versions if we choose to. They will be displayed in the versions tab. So all versions of a particular document will be listed in the versions tab on the right. And again, that can be opened via the little eye icon, the details cards, and it's visible. So a version is a separate document. It has the same document number, but then the sequential version number, .1, .2, .3, and .4. Now we can also see who last modified the document. And we can also leave comments for each other. These are the most underused part of version control for me. This is where we can add the detail about what we were doing at that point, where a document came from, what stage of drafting it was at, what other colleagues may need to be aware of. These comments are only stored in iManage. They're not saved against the document. Historically, people used to manage versions by putting this detail or some of this detail in the document name. And of course, you sometimes have to take some of that content out before you distribute it. But the comments means we can put quite a lot of detail here, and we can be quite candid as well. The document name can then stay clean or cleaner. Now, from within this display, remember that every version is a separate document, and every document has an actions menu. So the ... button here on the right-hand side will display options for not only version 4, the latest version, but also previous versions. One option that no one ever spots: compare to latest. If you currently perform document comparisons, formal compares, which applies kind of retrospective track changes, well, this will make sense to you. If you don't compare documents, then maybe it's not for you. But if I needed to see what has changed between version 3 and version 4, I can start that process from here. No one ever spots this. It's very useful. Also remember that when we click on a document name, it will launch that full screen preview. Ooh, this is my Wi-Fi, might be struggling a little bit today, but that's okay. And people forget also that the versions tab is available here. So if it's not visible, you may need to click on the eye again, versions. So if I'm perusing, I don't know, page 32 of a document, and I want to know, well, how did that look in version 3? I don't need to open it to do that. Click on version 3 in the preview, and it will then load version 3 into the preview. And it will remind you that you're not looking at the latest version, and it will even auto scroll to the same position in the document. So you can really compare visibly, at least visually, those two pages. But again, in the ... for version 3, I've got compare to latest. If I need to perform a more formal document comparison, I can do that from there. So the default view for versions, if we then go to the folder that this document lives in, because I'm currently looking at recent documents, so let me go to properties, down here, expand to view locations. It's in this folder, so I can click to navigate to that folder. So by default, it will only display the latest version of a document in a folder. So it's designed to declutter a folder. What we're looking at here should be the latest working copy. If I need to get to the older versions, they're tucked away here. So we're decluttering the folder, we're limiting the potential for error, but at any point I could choose to open the previous version for editing. Edit. But of course, I will always be warned, and this is one of the big selling points of version control. I might not realize it. If I've searched for a document, it will return the results of my search query, not necessarily the latest version. For example, your recent documents list will only display the documents you've recently worked on. Somebody may have created a new version of that document at a later point. So this will always warn me, a newer version exists. Do you want to open the most recent version? And it's a great prompt. Opening an older version, therefore, is a very deliberate, conscious decision. People do not do this by accident. Historically, people used to manage versions by just changing the file name to say v1, v2, v3. And that is what we should not do in iManage. It can get very messy when you receive a document that says v3 in the file name, but in iManage it's version 17. So I've already opened version 4. It's open at the bottom of the screen. Here it is. Now, I need to make changes. So let's say my colleague most recently amended this document. He's asked me to make my amendments to it, my changes, to review it, maybe using track changes. If I make those changes now and save the changes, I'm over-saving my colleague's document. How it looked at that point in time, it's gone. So the first thing I should do or consider when I open a document, do I need to create a version? People often think about this kind of thing further down the line, and by which time they've, by muscle memory, clicked on save in some other way. So first thing I would do, save as new version. Now saying that, and this is quite a new-ish feature, if you right-click on a document in iManage Work, within this new copy area, and not all of you will have this, there is a copy as new version option. Now I've got the document open, hence it's grayed out. So you can actually create the version first before you open it. So you can create a version without opening the document. We'll look at that again later, but think about saving first. Now, if I then create the version, it provides this new version properties box. I don't need to do a thing here, but it gives me an opportunity. Perhaps I'm tweaking the file name. Now, the things I see people put here, they may say draft, just to make it obvious it's not finalized. They sometimes add a date here, so today's date. So in iManage, we can easily see, visibly see, when the document was last modified, but not always when it was drafted into, or when it was sent, or when it was turned in that drafting process. So sometimes people might add a date in here, but the key thing is everybody knows what this date represents. The date it was received, the date it was sent, the date it was X, Y, and Z. And that's the key point for versioning. Most of the questions I'm asked aren't around how we do it. It's when and why. At what point? Who does that? What's the process? And that is probably the big takeaway from all of you, is if you haven't got a versioning protocol or process within your team, is to perhaps put one down on paper. The key thing is everybody does it the same way. If people do it in their own way, it's really hard to understand what was happening. It should kind of be really obvious. So we can change the file name, and we can definitely add comments. Some people will build the comments. So it shows the previous comments. You can then add more in, like a bit of a record. So I could say Chris amends final extracts for review. Whatever my colleagues might find useful. What's going to make sense to them? Will they know what I was doing here and why? Will this make sense to me in 6 months' time when I'm trying to unpick the drafting process and identify a particular document at a key stage? The comments are really valuable. You can change the author, of course, the owner of the document and class, but we can also change what file this should be a new version of. And this can be useful where you have duplication. You've got two documents. Some people have been updating one, some people updating the other. They're in different versioning threads. You want to connect them. So I could say actually make this a new version of a different file, and then I would delete the old thread. So you can reconnect things. But you don't need to do a thing here, but do consider the comments. The people who use versioning best put thorough comments. And there we are, it's version 5. Nothing really seems to happen. There's no flashing lights or notification, but we can see at the top now it says V5. I added the footer to my document. Oops, so I can now see version 5 here. To add the standard footer, it's all on the iManage toolbar. Click on footer and it will add it or update it. Now, of course, consider whether you should do that, because if it's a document from an external party, you might want to preserve their footer, but still, I'm sure you probably could work that out. So that now, if I have the printed copy of this document on my desk, or I receive anything maybe via email, and I have any doubts about what version this is, the footer is actually quite useful for that. So at this point, if we want to make changes to the document, I'm going to delete a whole clause here. There we go. Away you go. And I think this person deserves a pay rise. There we are. I'm going to save changes to this document. Oh, I did say actually I was going to put track in here. So let me turn track changes on. There we are. And then I can make my amendments. Now I've already created the version, so all I need to do is save the changes. And you may use the blue disk. I prefer this, but I pre-saved the changes. So in the browser, we then see that detail being added. Version 5, but the comments are the only way we're really going to understand who was doing what here and why. Last user just tells you who the last person who modified the document was, not necessarily what was happening. Now remember, even within versions, you can get a bit of a breakdown of the document history. In the menu or right click, anywhere in iManage, you will see that timeline option. And that will give you a history of all changes and actions over the past week, the past month, the past 3 months, or between two dates you specify. Who has edited this document? And this I use for troubleshooting. So if somebody hasn't created a version in a while, I want to know who's been working on it. That will give me that detail. Who created the version, who modified the version, when, at what time. There is also another feature here that some of you will have available and some of you won't. And you can sometimes see it in this view, but it always appears in the list view at the top. And sometimes it appears as a ... It depends on what version of iManage you're on. That people on different server versions, different flavors, and it's using a feature called journaling, which is actually a Microsoft Office 365 feature. If you've got this option, great. If you haven't, well, it means your company haven't enabled journaling or can't enable it. But essentially, every time a document is modified or closed, journaling feature will save a local copy as it looked at that point. And it's purely for recovery, emergencies, and definitely when people don't create versions often enough. If somebody only ever creates one version and everybody's oversaving the same document, all it takes is somebody to make an error and you're in trouble. You're then scratching around trying to find maybe one that you sent to somebody via email. Look in the timeline. If you have this option, you can download the document as it looked at that point in time. And then that could be a recovery option for you. You can review it, and if you think it's in good shape, you could then save it as the latest version. That's a really good get out of jail option. But it's purely for figuring out who did what at a more granular level, maybe what version's being sent to a customer or any external party. All that will be recorded under the email option in the timeline too. And I use that all the time to remind myself what versions I've sent to my clients. So we have great visibility at the version level. The comments are the top tip. We can go into the timeline to see who worked on it, but really you're relying on colleagues to manage versions in a logical way. So let's say my colleague Raj now has, I've notified him that, I've made my changes, track changes in there. It's time for him to review it. Again, the first thing he probably should do is create a new version. That good habit. He can then, I can say, reviewed by Raj, clean copy. Again, I can't spell, but that's okay. At all. There we go. So that comment, we're building up, again, the drafting detail there. So I'm going to accept and reject changes. Yeah, that's fine, etc., etc. Stop tracking. It's a clean copy. But I've already created the version, so I just need to save changes. If I'm distracted, if I go for lunch and forget that I didn't save the version, I've done it straight away. And I'm just saving changes to the document. The versions options are visible in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. We have the versions button here on the iManage toolbar, also on the main toolbar on the far right side. We get that same visibility. Who last worked on it and when. Those comments, again, I can really unpick that. I can edit the comments if I need to, add more detail to them. Each document has its own menu. If I want to see what physically changed, between version 5 and version 6, I can run that comparison. Compare here will give me the option to change my mind. So it assumes I want to compare version 5 with version 6. They're pre-selected. But of course, I could maybe go to the history or click the ... to change the document I want to compare that to. Again, if you're used to this window, this will make sense to you. This is the standard Word compare tool. If you've got third-party comparison tools, it may appear here, it may not, but this usually does the job. And then I've got a comparison, a physical comparison of those two documents. And I think they were the same document, but you get the idea, which I could then save as the next version. And this is quite a common thing. People will perform comparisons. They will then send that to their customers with the Word document, the latest draft, but this is the record of what's changed since they last saw the previous version. Compare of V5 and V6, and I'm saving that comparison as the version. Or I might, rather than doing that, save that comparison as a PDF, so it's not editable. So save as PDF is available here. It's the standard Word PDF conversion tool, but we get the option of saving that as the newest version. Or if you prefer, you might want to save that separately to this Word version thread. You might want PDF separate, but that's again something to agree with your colleagues. How should that be managed? I've worked with customers where they do things very differently. They have one thread for their document in terms of the internal drafting, and they will have a separate versioning thread with documents that come from the other side or from a client. They keep them completely separate, but that works for them. You need to align iManage to your best practice versioning protocols, drafting protocols, not the other way around. The key thing is everybody understands what they're looking at and they're doing it in a similar way. So I'm going to create this PDF as a new version, the latest version, because it's there for distribution. And again, the comments, should be the same because it is that document, but it's a PDF version of that document. We know it's going to be a PDF, and save, and the PDF will then be generated. In the browser, or anywhere really here too, obviously we're going to now see when we refresh that the latest version of that document is a PDF. It's not the word editable version, which can put people off a little bit, but they should be able to see, sent to client on 21st of July. Again, the comment should tell them everything they need to know to understand what happened here. Now, what I can then do is go back to my last Word version, which is version 6, and save as new version. Save as new version means save as newest version. It will leapfrog over any other versions to become the latest version. So again, I can change the comments, whatever I would need to do here, but we can now see the latest version will become that Word document. And that requires a bit of thought. We've got the to and fro's now. Now, an option you have, a lot of people don't realize, of course, quite often we're creating the PDF purely for distribution. We just want to send it externally. Do we actually need to save the PDF? We could attach it to an email, send the email, and save the email as a record. Again, that's something for you guys to agree with colleagues and agree the approved, accepted protocol. We got a question. Excellent. Yes, the original Word file does still exist, but it will be the previous version. So it still exists, but it's all, again, we just need to, the decision is, how do you connect that up again? Do you have it all within the same versioning thread? And I probably would recommend that because you can then see every internal drafting, everything that was distributed, PDF's part of that. But the point we're discussing now is, do we even need to save that? Surely we're just emailing the doc. We just want to email that. And then we could file the email as a record. And we could then put in the last Word document, we could then say copy sent to PDF copy sent to client on blah, 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 blah by a certain person. That could help then connect things up. So to quickly do that, by the way, now it depends on the version of Office you're running, but if you've got this share option in the top right corner of Word, little tip for you, send as PDF is here, and it will convert this current document to a PDF and attach it to an email. And then, of course, I could send that to my external party. And when I send, I use send and file to create the record of me sending that in the correct file, hopefully. And if you've got this box at the top, and again, it depends on the flavor of iManage you have. Many of you should have this. We could then say executed contract or final copy sent. We can add to this. This doesn't go on the email. It's just adding extra detail onto the filed email record. Final copy of agreement attached. That makes it easier to spot in iManage in the email folder. But the original subject goes out. And the whole point is, this is the when and the why. It's in what scenario would you do that? Would you save the PDF as a version, or should you send it just as an attachment and file the email? And do other people do it the same way? Because if they do it a different way, that's where the confusion starts. Everybody does it the same way. It's going to make sense. And agreeing what the standard way should be, and that's a difficult thing to do, but certainly with your close collaborators, I think it's quite important. Now, in terms of recovery, if we realize at any point that something's gone horribly wrong to any version, we can then use this to recover the document from a previous point in time. The more versions you have, the more granular the evolution of that document. Therefore, the more comparisons you can do and see that granular evolution. Therefore, the more recovery points you have. Undo will only undo in the current session. Versioning can work as an undo get out of jail feature. So let's say, for the sake of argument, something's gone horribly wrong to version A, or your customers decided, you know what, I don't like the direction of travel here, let's go back in time. We need to pick it up from the earlier conversation. Let's say that's the point. How do I know? The comments. The comments are going to let me know. And some people put quite a lot of detail in here. So that should be no doubt what stage of drafting this version was at. And when I click here in Word, Excel, or PowerPoint, I get that same prompt. It's not the latest version. You have that open. Silly, like passive aggressive, but it's trying to lead me to the latest version. This is an informed decision now. I want to open the selected version 6. Again, I'm not going to do that by accident. And there it is, version 6. Again, title bar at the top, 6. The footer, now be careful with footers. A lot of people use iManage. Don't assume it's your footer. It should have your database name in there. But still, if you're ever unsure whether it's the right footer, any issues, just click back on the footer button and it will refresh it. So I need to promote this. This is version 6. I want this to become the latest version. And I just click on Save as New Version. Save as New Version means save as the newest version. It has the previous comments. Now, we have to think carefully about what we add here. Do we add to? Do we remove? Now I'm going to keep this simple. Recovered from V6 as stuff went bad. Whatever colleagues would know, would need to know, where did this come from? Anybody who doesn't do this, particularly when they're promoting older versions, yeah, they want their wrist slapping because it can be a recipe for confusion. Certainly in terms of audit, troubleshooting, anything, unpicking any problem historically. Use the comments. You can put things in the file name, but you can put much more in the comments, and they only live in iManage. So this will become the latest version of this document. There we are, version 9. But the only thing that's going to make sense historically are those comments. I can't remember what I did yesterday, never mind 3-4 months ago. Okay, remember again, you've got your ... dots for every version here as well. Now, in terms of recovery, again, that's the best way. Remember, we've got that timeline also visible from in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. That's the history of every action performed by any of your colleagues on any version. Oh, so again, remember the day over the past 3 months, the past month, who has done what. We have that. If you have journaling enabled, again, the big if, you might be able to recover a document from an older point in time here. That's a good recovery option. But there is another emergency option. Well, there's the email option. We often think, did I email that to somebody? Things have gone wrong. I need to find an older version. Did anybody send it via email? And that's where this can help. It will tell you who sent it out via email, at what date and time, so it can help you locate those. The other super emergency option, and some of you may not be able to get to this, it will depend on what your IT team let you do. And to be honest, I would always go to your IT team first. But for those of you I know on the call that don't have dedicated IT access, or they are IT, there is another tip here for recovery, emergency recovery. If you open the Windows File Explorer, click into the address bar and type app data. This, now be careful in here. If any doubts, again, just go to your IT team or, but what in here is a folder called iManage. And in iManage, there's a folder called Work, iManage Work. And in there, we have recent. Now, do not mess with anything else in here. But what this is a store of any document you've previously opened on this piece, on your PC. It's not the original in iManage. They are documents you have worked on at some point, but they can be very useful emergency recovery options. So if for example, you modified a document today and you forgot to create the version and you hit save, well, what do you do? Maybe you worked on it yesterday. Maybe that copy of it is here. Maybe a colleague worked on it yesterday. Maybe they've got a bit of an old local, it's a bit like a temp file here. So that can be, yeah, the version number might be different, but certainly the date of modification, that's what you're looking for. Don't just open it. It can pick up iManage at this point, but yeah, if you do open it, you could save it as the next version. The document numbers are in the name there, but be careful there. Again, do take care, but that is a real get out of jail option. The app data folder, again, it's app data surrounded by the percentage symbols. Any doubts, just contact your IT team. But if it's 10 p.m. on a Friday and you're desperate, that recent folder is in there. That can be emptied though by your administrators after a week, but you know, it's another thing to look at. Okay, the compare tool again, by the way, is here on the toolbar. People call it iManage compare. It's not. It's Word compare. The only difference is when you click ... to compare, to choose documents, it launches the iManage dialog box. And remember, from here, you have a versions tab. Anybody, by the way, using the previous version of iManage, version 9, you had to right-click on a document and click on the versions option to see older versions. This is a little bit easier. So if I needed to select version 8 to compare with version 9 or version 7 or whatever it might be, it allows me then to go in and select that from here. The same when you're attaching documents to emails as well. There we are. Let me close that. So that's how we look at dealing with things from outside of iManage. Now, one thing people don't always spot, and let me go to another document, the one that isn't open. When we right click, again, I mentioned it earlier, if I know I want, now, I don't do this for me. I usually do it for others who perhaps aren't as diligent when it comes to creating versions. So I know I want somebody else to work on this document, but I don't want them to save over my latest version. So what I can do is when I close it, I can go to copy and say copy as new version. Copy for Raj to amend. I don't need to add the comment, but you know, I always do. And I've pre-saved it for others. Not that I'm a control freak, but you know I left it in a good state. I don't want to have them to worry about them not creating version 4 and over typing my document as it looked at that time. So I can use that right click, save, copy as new version option. You may not have this yet because some of our customers are on slightly older versions of iManage. They're a release or 2 behind, but you will get it at some point if it's not there now. So that's another tip. You may have documents stored outside of iManage. So people do collaborate with non-iManage users internally. There are people in your organization who don't use iManage, poor things, and they may be using SharePoint or a network drive, and you might have to copy documents down to that location for them to amend. You might email them to them, or anyway, it's outside of iManage. How do you get it in? You've got version 4 here, you've got a copy somewhere else, it needs to come in to here, but as version 5. Again, right click, upload new version. That will allow you to grab that document from wherever it's been stored. Let's say it's this one for the sake of argument, but then upload it to the system, but as the next version. It will even keep the original iManage name, even though that, yeah, so keep your eye on that. you might want the modified name, but it will revert back to the original thread there. But I definitely had a comment here. Copy from Z drive amended by blah by finance team, whatever. Again, where did this come from? Who worked on it? What should I expect? What stage of drafting were we at? I'm keeping the file name clean at all times. Upload. Of course, we can do that via email as well. That's probably the main way versions are sent, distributed. Now, with the work panel, or with FileSite, if you're still using that, of course, we can file emails and by dragging and dropping. And if that email contains an attachment, the attachment will go with the email, but you may want to save the attachment independently of the email. It's important in its own right. And you can use drag and drop to do that. But if you drag and drop, it will create version 1. Therefore, it could duplicate the document, and duplication is the enemy. If we have the same document more than once in the same folder, which one is the source of truth? These things can get messy. So if somebody has duplicated, how do I merge? Well, what I would do, I would open this, or I delete it and find it from my email and redo it. But if I don't have that, we don't have the original email, I would open that into Word. I think it was that one. No, it was that one. And then again, I would go to iManage. Save as new version. But then I would select the other file. Save this as a new version of the one it should have been saved as. Now, obviously, I should have paid attention to where I opened this from. So I'll just probably use my little shortcut here. Expand to view, please, it was in that folder, wasn't it? So it takes a bit of unpicking. So I would need, that's what it should have been a new version of. No, wrong one. That one, sorry. I've got far too many with the same name here. So that's the problem. That's why we use version control. We can have multiple documents in the same folder with exactly the same name. It can be chaos. Avoid the chaos. Use version control. But you can then unpick that. So I would then say, no, this should have been a new version of that one. And then, of course, I need to delete the one that shouldn't be there. So there are ways to unpick this. It does sometimes make your brain itch a little bit. Now, of course, email, best practice, if we receive an email that's part of a versioning thread. Now, we can use the Save Attachments button here to manage that. So I sent out to my client this agreement, version 9. I know it says final, but my client has still made some suggested changes to it. They may have signed it, I don't know. But I need to save that in the system, and I want to save that as version 10. To do that, I use the Save Attachments button. Also on the main toolbar here, same button. And then I can save that as a new version. It's going to warn me. Not always, only when it needs to. What this is saying in a very convoluted way is, wait a minute, this is version 9. You're now on version 26 in iManage. Are you sure you want to save this really old document as the latest version? So this is quite an extreme example, but if multiple people are collaborating on a version, you may not know they've created new versions internally until you try and manage your received email attachment. It's just letting you know that you may need to make a different decision. It's just helping you make an informed decision, really. So yes, I do want to save version 9 as version 27, and I'm going to do a comparison and tidy everything up afterwards. And then it will connect it to the previous version. Of course, you've got that select different file option for whatever reason you might need that. You can tweak the file name. You might say, received from client at a certain date. but it will put the date and time and the details of the email this attachment came from. But I definitely should say client amends of V9 need to compare, etc. That's not going to make any sense to people unless you really say why you did what you did. Save. The doing is easy. The when, the why, thinking about the protocol, the process is the challenge. Also, we need to think about what if 5 people receive the same email? Which person creates the version? That's more difficult to agree. I would say everybody does it because they are going to be separate. If everybody saves the same version at the similar times, you'll be kind of beating each other to it a little bit. But if you're all putting good comments in, people reviewing that will know, right, yeah, you can, yeah, people have just saved the same document. If everybody does it without the comments, they won't really understand it was from the same email. They might notice it perhaps, but it's not always as obvious. Now we can delete versions. So if you do get a mess, somebody's created a version where they shouldn't have created that version, you might want to tidy it up. You could say, please ignore in the comments, but you might say, actually, I want to trash that version. And it won't renumber, which is important, I think. It jumps from version 3 to version 5. So it's obvious someone has deleted version 4. And if you need to, you can contact your IT people who can then look for that document and recover it fairly easily because they'll have the number and they know it's .4. But again, tidying up versions is easy to do. Okay. And just to finish off, remember on the way out when we are sending an email, insert iManage attachment is there, and of course we again have that version tab. But also a top tip internally, details card version, so we can attach more than one, because these little tick boxes are not obvious. They're really, really small. I can't get, yeah, really hard to see that 2 are selected there, attach file. Yeah, I know, thank you. Again, warnings when you might need them. One little top tip is we need to avoid creating versions where possible, and one way we can avoid that is not sending each other copies of documents. People still do that. We should be sending links. We've got this option everywhere, here in Word, in the browser, in the attachment option. Send people a link, your colleagues. That's a link to the original. When they open it, they're opening the original, not a copy on an email, which they then have to save and manage as a version, which can create problems. One of the most common calls I've ever had in iManage is when people say, the system's lost my changes. The system. And they say, I worked on a document the other day, 3 hours of work, and I've gone to open that document in iManage and it's not there. Now, of course, we can look at the timeline to see who edited what document and when, and more often than not, they haven't amended the one in iManage. The one they've amended is one they received on an email. They received an attachment, they double-clicked and opened it, and then they started working on it, and then they saved it. Now, iManage should nearly always pick up that this is an iManage document, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes, external parties have metadata stripping tools and it doesn't know. So you can't save the changes. So they're saving it, they're hitting the blue disk, but where's it saving? It's not saving in iManage. It's saving, now it prompts you, but sometimes it's just saving back to the attachment. So that's what they're actually saving changes to, not the one in iManage. So people should be dealing with the saving part of this before they open the document. And again, save it first, then open it. And again, the one you're opening is the one in iManage, not the one on the attachment. Just takes a little bit of thought. We're really keen to get to the document, I know. Okay. And by the way, I did mention it. I think I should probably mention it again, just very quickly. If you do want to send those links from here, from an email, the link is always available. It's usually the secondary drop-down option. If you say attach link here, the next time you come here, that will then be the default, and attached file will be in this menu. So watch out for that. But think about how we use links and how we distribute internally too. Okay. And I think that's everything I know about versions. I don't think I've missed anything. The top tip is to agree your own internal with your colleagues versioning best practices. When you're collaborating with colleagues, if you're doing things in a consistent way that makes sense to everyone, it's easy. All it takes is one maverick to do it their way, and it can create chaos. So that agreed protocol that everybody understands. And by the way, a lot of colleagues often say, I don't like versions. What they really mean is, I don't understand it. I'm not confident. Okay. Question, what is the maximum file size that can be uploaded? I don't think there is a maximum file size as far as I'm aware. I saw a PDF in an iManage that was 400 plus megabytes, which is, like the size of Belgium, but it's not the prettiest document to open because it's enormous. So there probably is a limit, but I've just not come across it. But I would consider anything that's huge, maybe store that outside, just for speed. If you ever need to send it to someone, iManage can handle pretty big files though. I don't have a written manual. The doing's the easy part. The challenge is best practice for you. Every client I work with has a slightly different way of doing it. It's deciding what your best way is, because the clicking of buttons, that bit's the easy bit. Happy to advise though, happy to even arrange a call. Happy to talk in more detail. Yeah, it's the size of the file. It can be an issue, yeah. Is there anything written about how to use the system? So we've got the, there is the user guide, the iManage user guide. There is also the, let me see if I can pull it up. I'll put the link in here. There is the iManage Week 1 video series, which I'm just going to pull up, and I'll drop that into the chat window, the link for that. And it is at a high level, the basics. Let me put that in the chat. And there we go. That's the link. Whenever I do versioning guidance specific, I do workshops. I create, again, internal specifics, and I usually break it down by scenario. So the scenarios will be internal drafting, distribution externally and internally, dealing with things that come from outside and the different ways they can come in. So I think about it in that way. And then you align the training to that. Is there a way of allowing multiple users to edit a document at the same time? Good question. Yes, but again, it depends on the flavor of iManage you're on. And it also depends on actually the major issue is what version of Office you have, because it's really a Microsoft Office feature. But there's no iManage barrier. You just need to check with your organization, because it's not that straightforward as just turn this on. Do you have the right versions of Office? Is it something they want people to do in terms of risk, in terms of what the firm feels is okay to do? Do you have the right version of iManage? We've got the Azure guys and we've got the people on premise, but you can add in the 365 option here. And co-authoring multiple people editing the same document at the same time is actually a 365 or not Microsoft Office feature. But When I select that, it opens that document up into the web browser. I don't know if it's going to work on this machine actually. Oh yeah, okay. Because I'm not actually logged in as me on this machine, but still, it likes it. And then multiple people can then work on it. But in iManage, if I go back, it then adds in, if I refresh, oh, it will add it in at some point. There'll be a little planet icon here to let you know multiple people editing it. So checked out means padlock. It's coming, basically. If you haven't got this functionality now, you will. iManage right now is all about removing any barriers to collaboration. Any other questions? Don't think I missed any. Okay. Who knew you could talk about versioning for 55 minutes? I could go on for hours, but I don't get out much. So hopefully for you guys, it all made sense. I tried to cover as much content hopefully in a logical way as possible. Again, this video will be available on the iManage webpage. You will also get a video sent to you via email that you can get to. And on that, you'll have a link to sign up to the newsletter. So more tips, tricks, and also links to future webinars. The user guide is actually, we'll send you the user guide because it's not easy to find. So Vanessa, I'll make a note of that. I apologize in advance. The user guide is like a Soviet tank manual, but everything's there. Oh, by the way, saying that, you don't really need the user guide. I'm being silly. I'm not going to send you that. It's not pretty. In the top right-hand corner of iManage Work 10, question mark, and in here, learn more. That's the online user guide. It's the same. And everything is here. Working with documents, categorized, we can search. You just need to find where those topics are. And copying a document as a new version. Again, it will be in here somewhere, just under, and then you got these little GIFs as well, which is quite nice. So the online user guide is there. You just have to find the topics. Within here. But I think if we type in version, yeah, you might have it'll show you everything there. Renaming versions, uploading versions, deleting versions, copying versions. Who needs a boring old document? Okay. I think that's everything. So again, thank you all for joining.